Welcome back. We've been talking about coming changes to the laws that govern competition in Canada. We're talking to our Commissioner of Competition, Matthew Boswell. Matthew, is there an ideal scenario that you would like to see happen?
I guess the question, how much time do you have?
3 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to cover it in 3 minutes. We are, in the next few weeks, we'll be making our submission to the government's consultation public. And I can tell you now that we'll likely have more than 50 recommendations as to changes to the Competition Act. Probably the biggest area where we'll have recommendations is in the area of merger review. You've already talked about the efficiency defense. There are multiple other areas of our merger law that in our view, as the only entity in the country that enforces competition law, are in need of significant change. There are, as we like to say here at the Bureau, there are big potholes in the Competition Act. There are a bunch of speed bumps as well, but there are a lot of big potholes that need to be fixed for the benefit of Canadians.
There was, of course, a very high-profile Rogers-Shaw dispute that went to tribunal. On the other side of changes to the Competition Act, would you expect a different outcome? In other words, the tribunal can only deal with the act in front of it. It is what that's sort of their parameters. Should the parameters have been different and a different outcome have been achieved?
Well, with respect to Rogers-Shaw, I mean, I don't propose to relitigate the case in the media. We've said publicly we're very disappointed by the tribunal's decision. We disagreed. We disagree with the tribunal's decision. There are some things certainly coming out of Rogers-Shaw that need to be clarified in the act. For example, how does the tribunal go about assessing a new deal that gets proposed after we've commenced our lawsuit? That is the remedial standard in the act, and that needs to be considered. So, it's not appropriate to speculate on what changes might have impacted that case. That was a case where we put forward a tremendous amount of evidence in support of our position that the transaction, including the sale of Freedom to Videotron, was still going to result in competitive harm to Canada, competitive harm to consumers in the West, in Alberta and British Columbia. And, we stand by the evidence we put forward. But, detaching that from amendments, we're very encouraged that the government is taking this holistic approach to looking at the act. That, they've been engaging with us since 2019 on the entire framework and how it could be improved. And we've done a deep dive, and we have a lot of views on how it could be improved based on our enforcement experience, but also based, and this is important, on international best practices and what our key partners have in their competition laws that make them produce results in terms of competition for people in other jurisdictions.
We have to leave it there, Commissioner. We appreciate your time today. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Matthew Boswell is Canada's Commissioner of Competition. Time for the takeaway and reaching a tipping point. It seems that Canadians are noticing tips showing up in new places, and we're not fans of it. Services that were once tip-free suddenly ask us if we feel inclined. And even in places you might have expected a tip, the suggested amounts are climbing, as high as 30%, something that has been dubbed tipflation. But while it may cause a few moments of discomfort at the point of purchase, it's a serious economic issue. Tipping is a weird practice to begin with. Thought to originate in Europe in the Middle Ages, it was a way for the master to toss a few coins the way of the servant, perhaps as a cheap and degrading means of keeping them working hard. Migrating to North America by way of travelers who thought that tipping made them seem aristocratic, tipping is now so common in some industries that staff are paid less to account for it. In Canada, the legal minimum wage is lower for those who might also earn tips. The question isn't really, are the tips too high, But how on earth did we let this happen? Tipping is a practice that is rife with inequity and terribly vulnerable to racism, sexism, and general all-round bad behavior. For the most part, we've settled rather nicely into the concept that people should be paid a decent wage commensurate with the service they provide. We don't argue that a heart surgeon should earn the same as a short-order chef, but in both cases, the worker in question deserves to know upfront the value of their work and make a rational decision about whether it's worth their while. Anyone who relies on a tip to fill out meager wages is only notionally relying on their own behavior. The other side of the equation is a random customer who may have their own weird ideas about what good service looks like. Meanwhile, the boss has offloaded a chunk of payroll onto his customers. My takeaway, the real problem with tipping isn't how much or how frequent it is. It's that we've allowed it to replace a decent living wage. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.